Hello, and thank you for joining us for another live-streamed event, which is COVID-proof as always. Today, Elia Group is presenting its paper on a consumer-centric market design. And you can see a glimpse of the cover on screen now. In fact, we are publishing two documents. We have a vision paper for those who want a concise introduction to the concept, and a white paper for experts who want to delve into it in more detail. Later today, both documents will be published on our website. Since it is an Elia Group paper, the document is the result of months of collaboration between experts from Elia in Belgium and 50 Hertz in Germany. So throughout today's event, we will be joining our colleagues in the Netzkwartier, the headquarters of 50 Hertz in Berlin. As you can see, Stefan Kapferer and Dirk Bierman are already there. See you later. What can you expect from us over the next 90 minutes? During the first part of today's event, our CEOs will be exploring high-level messages related to the context of the paper and the opportunities it brings. During a second part, we will explore the paper in a little more detail with our experts, followed by a panel. We will also share many statements from people who are not from the energy sector itself. They wanted to be involved in today's event, as they are seeing more and more convergence with the energy sector through the electrification of their businesses. One important point needs to be made before we kick off. The proposed market model is about unleashing competition behind the meter and is not about adequacy. In other words, an assumption made in our paper is that markets are overall adequate, and if they are not, adequacy issues need to be tackled first. Before we invite our first speaker on stage, let's have a look at what Elia Group's newest vision paper is all about.
The use of flexible appliances like electric cars and heat pumps is on the rise. They are opening the door to new ways for consumers to interact with the electricity system. In a world led by renewable energy, the most efficient way to charge these kinds of appliances will be when there is plenty of wind or sun available. This will be cheaper for the consumer and will help to keep the electricity system in balance. Today, we have the right digital technologies to allow this to happen, but a number of barriers stand in the way. That's why Elia Group has developed a new consumer-centric market design. Just two small changes are needed to make it a reality. Firstly, a hub allowing an exchange of energy blocks is needed, so different parties can exchange energy with each other on a 15-minute basis. If your solar panels produce more energy than you need, you'll be able to sell this excess to friends, an energy community, or other suppliers. The second change involves sharing a real-time energy price. It fluctuates according to factors like the weather, the time of day, and general demand for electricity. Sharing this real-time price will encourage consumers to use electricity when it's cheaper and most convenient for the system. The new market design will therefore allow the efficient integration of more renewable energy into the system, allow consumers to optimize their energy costs, and ultimately support the decarbonization of society. So, let's break down barriers to better services.
Apart from industrial companies, consumers are not directly linked to the high voltage grid of Elia Group. So why is Elia Group interested in consumer services? I'll immediately put the question to Chris Peters, CEO of Elia Group. Why is it our concern?
Well, for the ones that followed Elia over the last couple of years, they know that we are concerned with the changes that are happening within the electricity system. And so what we have today is a system where we still have a large presence of thermal plants, and those thermal plants will be adjusted to demand. So that's the role of Elia to keep that equilibrium. If we see the energy transition, we will integrate more and more renewables, and those thermal plants will be phased out. And at that moment of time, of course, we need to adjust demand towards that production that is coming from renewables, and it's intermittent and that we cannot steer. And therefore, already a few years ago, we launched already a paper on how a customer-centric market design could look like. And that customer-centric market design was based on 3 pillars. Those 3 pillars are a effective and efficient communication layer that works into the real time, a number of new digital tools, and an upgraded market design. And now today specifically, we will have those papers that give a light on how such an upgraded market design would look like. Because what we have done so far since the last 3 years is work together with 65 industrial players into an ecosystem where we developed solutions already that could function in this environment. We haven't yet worked on that market design that would facilitate, of course, that we can scale this and that this can become real consumer products going forward. And therefore, we have launch now this document so that we can engage with the sector on how this next step needs to happen.
Yeah. Why is it important that all actors take part in the development of this new market design? Because that seems very complex.
Well, the energy transition is complex. What we try to do here is completely shift the current system towards a new system by 2050 and that it's carbon-free. And to make sure that we can do that, we have to fully change the setup. That means that we have to electrify a number of sectors like mobility, like heating. We have to review the value chains in industrial clients. And if we want to make that happen, we have to, of course, make sure that we integrate digital tools to see how we can connect both worlds. And so here you see how Elia has developed his point of view. So what we see is that we have a physical infrastructure that has constraints coming from the fact of the availability of renewables, which is weather dependent, so very variable. We have, of course, infrastructure which has potentially congestions, cross-border constraints, etc. So we have to take into account those constraints. But on the other hand, we want to give the optimal user experience. And if those users adjust their behavior in a way that is increasing their comfort and meanwhile is creating that flexibility onto the grid, we both will win. And that's why this transition is so important for us.
Yeah, and the technology is mature and you have a lot of opportunities coming up.
Yes, indeed. So what we see is if we can become more relevant to our clients with the technology that we have, we can start to engage with much more smaller flexibilities, and that's what we try to do here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This new market design is the way to reach a net zero society. Let's listen to a statement from Katarina Sikov-Magni from the European Commission. She is the director who is responsible for the green transition and energy system integration. She has confirmed that we need a different electricity system than the one we have today.
Our energy system needs to adapt to respond to the challenges of today and accordingly evolve and prepare for those of tomorrow. We welcome all concrete initiatives that could help us realize that and bring forward the flexibility, responsiveness and liquidity required in our energy markets. Even more so when it is centered around us, the EU citizens, and serves our interests. And it is doing that, driving at the same time the innovation, allowing novel business models to capture system benefits, including flexibility in consumers' demand and delivering value to all concerned. We are looking very much forward to seeing the Elia Group's teams walking the talk and showing us all how we could reach our common goals under the green and digital transition while reaping the opportunities coming with it. Have a great journey. Have a great meeting. Thank you.
The European Commission welcomes any concrete initiative that could bring the required flexibility and liquidity to our energy market. And yet, Chris, the large-scale participation of retail demand-side flexibility is not happening yet. Why is that?
Well, that's because we still see important barriers. Besides of industrial players, actually nobody has access directly to the wholesale market. And that means, of course, that we still have a lot of complexity to make sure that consumers can benefit from the price signals coming from that market. Let me give you a couple of examples. So first of all, if you look at somebody that would like to sell, for instance, his solar production at the moment that he's going on holidays, that's something that he cannot do today. Or if somebody would be visiting a friend, tries to charge the car, and would have this all seamlessly put on his own invoice, that's something that we cannot do today in the current market design. And so if we want to make sure that clients can really, or customers can really benefit from the changes that are happening, given that the technology is there, is that we have to change that market design. And the essence of this market design is one where consumers, also retail consumers, can exchange blocks of energy with each other. And on top of that, that we can put a price to that so that it enables to have a real market development around these small elements of flexibility.
Mm-hmm. The reality today is that consumers are able to switch suppliers relatively easily, but it is almost impossible for them to access services offered by third parties behind the meter. Let us listen to a statement from Professor Jeanmichel, the director of the Florence School of Regulation.
Ladies, gentlemen, we have to decarbonize everything, all the electricity we consume and will consume for our cars, for heating and cooling. We have to become responsive to the needs of decarbonized renewable. We have to have demand response flexibility. Why should we get all of these various things from a single supplier? Tell me, why a monopoly on supply? All of this is behind the meter. It is in my private life. I can do what I choose. The only thing we need is to protect consumers being not sure to make good choices. If they are protected, the others can choose. And tell me, why not to live in an energy community? To have an energy community, we have to quit again the monopoly of the single supplier. We are in 2021, everything is digitalized, even dating. Why not electricity consumptions for people willing to manage themselves the way they consume?
Professor Glacier advocates breaking up the monopoly enjoined by the single supplier. Chris, who stands to gain and who stands to lose from the introduction of the consumer-centric market design?
Well, the obvious winner, of course, will be the consumer, because the consumer will be freed up and will have higher levels of comfort for similar prices, or will be able to benefit from moments of low prices. And of course, also society will benefit from this, because as you look at how the system is organized, with additional flexibility, we can integrate more renewables without that we have to invest in dedicated flexibility to compensate for the intermittency of those renewables, and therefore the system cost will be lower. But finally, I think that everybody can benefit from that. So our sector will move into a new world where they can create more value for consumers, and therefore as well can have a benefit from developing those products and bringing them to the clients, and then make a benefit out of this.
Yeah, and who could potentially lose out?
Well, actually, we can all lose out. At the moment that we would miss this transition, I think we come into a situation where we become less relevant, and where we even come into a situation that we will have to put constraints on clients, where we have to tell them when they can or cannot charge their car, or we will have moments when we will not want them to, for instance, use their heat pump. That's a situation that we don't want to land in, and therefore it's important that we, together with the sector, but not only our sector, also the sectors that are electrifying, are moving into this new world.
Mm-hmm. Elia in Belgium was at the forefront of a market design for industrial demand-side response. It made the balancing market much more liquid, says Peter Jan Mermans. About 10 years ago, he was a demand-side participation pioneer as one of the founders of the Belgian aggregator Restore.
Hi. Over the past few years, I've been deeply involved in demand-side flexibility in Europe and beyond. And in Belgium, in that time period, a couple of stakeholders really took a leadership role in unlocking demand-side flexibility from industrial users. That brought a lot of volume to balancing markets, and also it offered an opportunity for export to other countries in Europe, Japan, and to the US for that developed technology. Today, we're facing a new challenge with B2C flexibility. And I think the question really is how to bring B2C flex in a scalable and cost-efficient way to wholesale markets. We can again take a leadership position there, and I believe that's really key.
It's about taking a leadership position. Thank you, Pieter-Jan Mermans. Chris, could a consumer-centric market design be as successful as the industrial one?
Yes, we expect really that this can be a successful journey, as we have witnessed with the ecosystem in industrial flexibility. There, not only industrial clients could benefit and have their flexibility monetized, we also saw the new sector that Pieter-Jan Mermans talked about, but also the suppliers benefited from that in the way that they could, for a lower price, balance their portfolio. We think that similar things can happen now if we start to engage the retail sector into a similar system. We already received quite some positive feedback, and our intention is now to move forward and to move ahead with this so that we can actually roll this out by 23-24 so that consumers can start to benefit, but also that our sector can start to benefit from this new approach.
Mm-hmm. And the changing expectations of consumers can also be seen in other sectors. Let's look at the example of KBC Bank and Insurance, one of Belgium's leading financial institutions. With the introduction of KBC Mobile, they invested heavily in digital services for their clients, both financial but also non-financial. We'll now hear from Johan Thees, CEO of KBC Group.
Whatever business we are in, be it the financial service industry, be it energy, we all have a common asset and focus, our customers. And I believe it's safe to say that over the years, we have learned that their expectations have fundamentally changed. They want to be in control and expect fast, reliable, and individualized products and services without any hassle. Nothing more, nothing less. At KBC, we proactively meet our customers' expectations with both financial and non-financial solutions that make their life easier and save them valuable money and time. Today, over 500,000 users of KBC Mobile actively make use of third-party non-financial services offered in the app. These services have generated several millions of transactions and are clearly responding to a customer need. So, why not expanding our offer with a possibility to charge an electric car using KBC Mobile? Just like we provide a refuel with Q8, pay and stop a parking session, or buy tickets for public transport. The potential is huge, as electric cars will soon dominate the market. So, let's work together, Elia and KBC, and make this possible for our customers. Your energy network and our mobile banking power and the trust our customers place in us, meeting a joint proactive service which now already responds to our customers' future needs, because that's what they expect from us.
Linked to future needs, this is also one of the ambitions of the consumer-centric market design that we are presenting today. Let's go now to Berlin, to the Netzquarter of 50 Hertz. Stefan Kapferer, the German government recently decided to ensure Germany becomes climate neutral by 2045. That's 5 years earlier than the rest of Europe. What could be the impact of this decision on the energy sector?
Yeah, hi Marlene, hi Chris. Of course, the time frame of the process is shortened if it's 2045, but what is often overseen is that there are also higher sector targets in 2030. So we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the energy sector, in the industrial sector, but also in the private households and the transport sector. And very obvious, this is a clear push for more investments in renewable energies. It's a clear signal that we have to accelerate the expanding of the grid infrastructure. But maybe more relevant is another step, the step of decarbonizing the energy-intensive industry in Germany. And we all know Germany is traditionally a country with a lot of energy-intensive industries. It is chemical industry, steel industry, aluminium industry, also in our control area of 50 hertz. And that means we have to direct electrify or indirect electrify industrial processes. We have to speed up the use of demand-side management in the industrial sector. And a last remark about these very ambitious goals of the German government. We will see now the start of a mass market of e-vehicles and heat pumps in private households. That's very clear.
I would like to come back on demand-side management, because indeed access to flexible assets is becoming increasingly necessary in a system which compromises a high share of renewable energy. In Germany, or in 50 hertz, in your control zone, you have already 62% of electricity from renewables. How are you managing flexibility today, and how will you manage it in the future with even more renewables?
Yeah, first of all, I think that we should all have in mind the single European market for energy is becoming more and more relevant. But that's, of course, not enough. So what about the track record of 50 hertz in using surpluses of renewable energy for power-to-heat situations in some areas of northern Germany? We did it in a lot of opportunities with local utilities in this area, and I think that's a very good option we can use also in the future. But there's another project which is coming up now in the industrial side, and that's the use of electrolyzers to produce green hydrogen. This is another instrument of flexibility, because we will not use these electrolyzers in industrial sites all the time, 24 hours per day. So this is a great opportunity also to use a kind of flexibility. But nevertheless, also the e-vehicles, the heat pumps, the storage capacities in private households will become more relevant. The consumer, or like often discussed in Germany, the prosumer will play a critical and crucial role in this transformation process in the future.
Yeah. I would like to ask a question on the banner that we are seeing behind you, in line with the 50 hertz initiative entitled From 60 to 100 by 2032. 50 hertz has set the goal of securely covering electricity demands in your grid area with 100% renewables. How does consumer-centric market design fits in this ambition?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to know that also today we have regions in our control area of 50 hertz, where at the moment today, a very sunny day, a windy day here in eastern Germany, in Brandenburg, in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, we have areas where also today the generation capacity of renewable energy is maybe 150%, 180% of the demand situation in these areas. Of course, that's different in Berlin and Hamburg, big metropolitan areas in our control area where there is a need for more renewable energy at the moment. But we can all imagine with the higher targets in Germany, the periods over the week, over the year, where we have a surplus, where we have more than 100% of renewable energy in our system, is a growing share. And to handle this challenge, to tackle this challenge, of course, the mass market I mentioned earlier today, the mass market of maybe in 2030, 15 million e-vehicles in Germany, the mass market of heat pumps, the mass market of storage capacities in the households, and using this kind of flexibility, encouraging the consumer to use it in the interest of society and in his personal interest, is a relevant topic to manage the challenge in the future.
Yeah, you already mentioned the German industry sector many times. Indeed, Germany has to speed up the development of flexibility options in the electromobility and heating sectors. These are two very important industrial sectors in Germany. And we have a statement from Max Wiesmann. He is the co-CEO of Wiesmann Company about the electrification of heating.
Electrification of heating is a fundamental step that we must take if Europe is to transition to a net zero society. It is as simple and important as that. And we at Wiesmann know exactly that. We already have the technology and the solutions today, including heat pumps, fuel cells, photovoltaic power storage units. But this is only half of the story. Putting the user fully in control of their own energy usage through digitalization is just as important. Through automated digital services, users can monitor, control their own energy consumption, producing, buying, and selling energy themselves. The benefit is obvious and immediate. The right mix of the right energy sources and hybrid solutions will provide optimal user flexibility, balancing regulations, production, consumption costs, and sustainability. However, we cannot wait. The time for action is now, and there is a lot to do and a lot ahead of us. So let's jointly move together towards a sustainable future, because it is the responsibility of all of us to co-create living spaces for the generations to come.
Germany, Stefan, has a very strong mobility sector. You have a very strong manufacturing industry with companies like Wiesmann. Do you think that the new era has begun for the German economy with a stronger focus on greening, on digitalization?
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, because what we just heard from Max Wiesmann, and we all know Max Wiesmann is representing an industry which is based for years on oil and gas, and his message was very clear. We have the technologies now to use electricity, and time for action is now. And we can see it also in many other areas. We all know that there is this acceleration process when we think about transforming the mobility, the transport sector, based on e-vehicles. And what we have seen also in the last few weeks is, for example, a discussion between BASF and RWE. How can we use offshore wind to decarbonize the chemical industry? So it is obvious to me that a high share of renewables, the competences and the know-how to handle these kind of system, which is our responsibility as Elia Group, and the interest of safeguarding the industrial workplaces in Europe comes together, and that's the reason why this is such a timely discussion.
Okay, thank you, Stefan Kapferer from Berlin, for sharing your thoughts. We will now return to the studio in Brussels. Chris, we have one last question for you. To end this first part, with the publication of the white paper on consumer centricity, Elia wants to put things in motion, but what are the next steps now?
Well, we will launch two parallel tracks. One track will be on getting more experience on what this means, this customer-centric market design, and in parallel we will start a dialogue with everybody interested to ensure that the remaining pain points and attention points are addressed in the right way. I will not yet give more details, but at the end of this live session, I will give the details on how you can engage together with us. Let's bear this in mind. As we just heard Wiesmann, we have to move fast because this electrification is coming at a high speed towards us, and the ambitions that Europe has set in terms of renewables are as well very high, so we need to deliver this as a sector. Our plan is to continue discussing and testing until the end of the year. Next year will be a full year of detailed testing in all the elements that need to have more clarification. And then we want to have a progressively rollout of this new way of working in 23 and 24, so to ensure that every single customer by the end of 24 can benefit from those new trends.
23, 24, that's 2 to 3 years from now. So there is no time to lose in bringing about a significant change. Thank you, Chris. We will see each other. Yeah, we will see each other again at the end of the event for some closing words. Someone who is very excited about the upcoming change in the electricity sector is Peter Hinsen. He is a technology entrepreneur and author. He's a well-known Belgian keynote speaker who is particularly interested in the impact of technology on society. According to Peter Hinsen, the next decade will be the decade of electrification. For him, this is a momentum of awakening for the energy sector.
Hi, my name is Peter Hinsen. I'm a technology entrepreneur. I've done technology startups all of my life. But if I would be 20 again today, I wouldn't focus on technology. I wouldn't focus on digital. I would focus on energy. It's an understatement to say that the energy sector is facing enormous challenges. It's not just the ecological concerns and our need to act upon them. This is truly the age of electrification. This is becoming the next decade, the electric decade. We're facing an enormous set of opportunities where renewables are probably going to become cheaper than fossil fuels. We're going to see the rise of mass adoption of, say, electric vehicles and mobility. We're going to see an enormous surge in using electricity to warm and cool our houses. Every part of society is being electrified. But the consumer market is going to see an explosion of flexible assets that need to be integrated, that need to be controlled, and need to be optimized. And at the very heart of that is the consumer. Now, the consumer has been getting used to the fact that digital is absolutely the new normal. Over the last decade, digital has become absolutely normal and has even lost its meaning. It's just there. And the consumer has learned to actually use that and is accustomed to that. The new players on the market, the Wazes and the Netflix, have raised the Olympic minimum when it comes to customer expectations. The customer expects in this new normal that things are easy, are seamless, and are relevant. And this is going to be, in my opinion, an awakening moment for the energy sector. Because the energy sector has been incredibly dormant for the last 30, 40 years, focusing on production and relatively easy distribution. But all of a sudden, that consumer is active, and that consumer has been accustomed to the new normal. The customer is at the very heart of that transformation. But there are enormous potential opportunities there. This is the momentum. Many traditional companies will have to reinvent themselves, but I think there is enormous potential for them to become stronger, to become a phoenix in their industry. This is the electric decade, and seizing the opportunities that are there is going to distinguish which ones will make it and will become a phoenix and will get stronger, and which ones make. But this is not about challenges and threats. This is about capturing the momentum of opportunities. If I would be in my 20s, I would know what to do. I wish you a lot of success in this new, wonderful, never normal.
During the momentum of opportunities, that is indeed what we are trying to do with our paper on consumer centricity. Welcome to part 2 of today's event. In a moment, we will be talking to some of our guests, but first let's share some more details about Elia Group's proposal with you. We brought in our 2 experts. We have David Zenner, Head of Consumer Centricity at Elia, and secondly, joining us from Berlin, from the 50Hertz headquarters, Dirk Biermann, the Chief Officer, Markets and System Operators. David, I'll start with the first question for you. The consumer-centric market design that we propose today brings 2 changes to the current market design. The first one is the exchange of energy blocks. What is this?
So indeed, so our consumer-centric market design is characterized by 2 key building blocks, I could say. And the first one is the exchange of energy block concept. Exchange of energy block concept is allowing end consumers to enter in an exchange with any market parties of their choice, an exchange of a block of energy on a 15-minute basis. And to make this as clear as possible, maybe this concrete example that you can find on the screen screen. So imagine a consumer that is having a consumption that is represented by the blue line and is willing to, for example, source part of that consumption through a block of energy from a nearby solar farm, which is represented in the scheme by the green block. Well, he should be able to do so. And that consumer has, for example, an electrical vehicle and wants also to benefit from the flexibility this electrical car is bringing to him. And wants also to exchange a block of energy, a flexibility block, with a flexibility service provider of his choice, which is represented again in the graph by the orange block. And those energy exchanges that consumer is doing with those service providers are directly settled with those service providers and can be settled based on private or embedded metering data that are embedded in those appliances, for example. But there is still a delta. There is still a delta between the total consumption that had been metered through the digital head meter and those exchanges the consumer entered into. And that part, of course, that's then sourced via his main supplier, which still plays an essential role to that end consumer. Mm-hmm. Regarding the non-regulated part, regarding the grid tariffs, the taxes and the levies, those are directly and at once invoiced to the consumer based on what has been metered on the digital head meter.
Mm-hmm. Then the second key building block of the consumer-centric market design is this price signal that reflects the situation of the grid. Why do we need that?
Yeah, so indeed, that's a very important second key building block of our design. Well, the main goal of that price signal is actually to give to the consumer a evaluation of the flexibility he has. And as balancing will rely in the near future more and more on decentralized assets, we want to make sure that the price signal is triggering the reaction in order to be able to stabilize the system at any time and in all market conditions. And therefore, it's very important that price signal, that price reference, is representing the system condition in a real time. So that's the key element on the real-time price.
But they have a good incentive to adapt to
Indeed.
the needs of the grid.
Yes.
Being exposed to a price signal, could it be risky for the consumers? I think of what happened in Texas at the beginning of this year, where we had a big power outage with huge prices. Could something similar happen with this consumer market design?
Yeah, I understand that this is, of course, a question when you are talking about exposure to real-time price. Let me first of all state that the consumer-centric market design is offering a possibility to be exposed to the real-time price. It's by no means an obligation to be exposed. So consumers can still opt in our design to, for example, a fixed price contract. And even if consumers will be deliberately choose for an exposure to a real-time price, then those consumers still will need to be protected through consumer protection schemes, for example. And that's what we see happen also in the UK, for example, where we see the new kids on the block, the Octopus, for example, bringing those contracts, those day-ahead price contracts into their customers and allowing them to react on that with some barriers, with, for example, some caps on that evolution. And even with that, they observe some radical changes and behavior changes with their consumers. The consumers are adapting their consumption based on the price, consuming less when prices are high, consuming more when prices are low. And that's what we just are aiming for. So, to my opinion, if we design it in a smart way, an intelligent way, and we bring that consumer protection into that design, I'm quite confident that we will be able to avoid some Texan situation in Europe.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's now join our colleagues in Berlin again. Dirk Bierman, you're responsible for system operations at 50 Hertz. Why are we interested in what is happening behind the meter? Shouldn't we leave this to the market?
Yeah, hi Marlene, hi everyone. Yes, of course, and we definitely will leave it to the market. The idea is to make this flexibility behind the meter available for the market so that the market can use it. This is the idea. And as we have said already, couple of years ago, there was not much potential behind the meter, so it was not in our focus. But nowadays, and that has already been said, with all the new flexible assets, it becomes more and more important to get also access to this to these assets, to these flexible assets behind the meter. This is the idea. And then, Marlene, think of sensors and think of IT communication infrastructure that to some or to a major extent is already there. And it is available also for energy appliances at low marginal costs. And we want to make use of this to the benefit of the society. And then finally, and this is maybe more directed to the German audience, we have to overcome the standard load profiles. Standard load profiles, not the real consumption, not the real flexibility, makes the flexibility behind the meter invisible for the market. And this is not good. This we have to change. So in other words, the way how we exchange data will play a central role to make flexibility accessible.
Yeah. If we talk about consumer services, what kind of services can we provide with this consumer-centric market design?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of different services possible. We try to structure it a little bit. So the first application, of course, is commercial exchanges that you can organize with a new market design in an easy way. So with low entry barriers, much lower and more easy also for small consumers, for small customers than entry to the wholesale market for electricity. And then, of course, such design will also facilitate energy communities, easy interaction between different parties of such a communities, and even with contracts for very specific appliances. So you could have a specific contract for a heat pump, for a battery, for whatsoever. Then the third field of possible services is, of course, the flexibility that consumers are in a position to sell their flexibility, their specific flexibility to the market to make it accessible for the market. And finally, the enhanced traceability. The new market design will make it much easier to track the origin of energy sources for supply. So you can organize more easily green supply or even more specific supply from very, very specific sources at very specific locations. Mm-hmm. This is the idea.
Then we're talking about green tracking. A lot of possibilities. Is it with the current market design in Germany not possible at all to deliver those services?
Well, not at all. Theoretically, a lot of things are today also possible, but they must be easy. They must be easily introduced at low barriers, at low cost. This is the point. And we want to make it easy for the consumer, because only if it is easy at low cost, it is attractive for the consumer. And only if it is attractive for the consumer, then it is scalable. And what we want to achieve are scalable solutions that then provide relevant flexibility also to the system.
Mm-hmm. If the consumer-centric market design becomes a reality, who will be the first adopters in Germany, you think?
Yeah, the sector that most urgently requires such changes is certainly the e-mobility sector. Look at where we stand today. Basically, we have, as electric vehicles, batteries on wheels moving around, crossing the borders from one grid to the other, even from one country to the other. Mm-hmm. When we see the situation now, it is not convenient for the driver to charge the charging is normally bound to the charging station and not to the car as it should. And also, it is not attractive for him to provide flexibility to the system because it is so complicated, if it is possible at all. So this is something that has to be changed. And just recently, the German regulator published a new regulation on e-mobility, and this has to be further developed, I believe. It is not yet there where we want to have it. And also, and this is again more for the German audience, all the discussion around the paragraph 14a in the German energy law shows that this is a very difficult situation, also a very difficult change that we want to facilitate with our new market design.
Okay, thank you, Dirk from Berlin, and also thank you, David, here in the studio. Let's now listen to some thoughts from the business world. Before we invite some guest speakers to join us, we will give the floor to Michael Villa from the European Business Association, SmartN. And their vision is that every European should benefit from playing an active role in the energy transition. Michael Villa is the executive director, and he has 5 recommendations to share.
So what do TSO really need to do to put consumer at the center of the clean energy transition? 5 recommendations. First one, profit of the huge potential of all decentralized energy resources in end user sector. In particular, focus on buildings and transport where there is a huge potential. It has been calculated that 200 gigawatts of controllable loads are present just in residential buildings. These are all assets that should be procured in a market-based way by system operators and eliminate limitation to independent aggregators that can contribute to this procurement in a reliable way. Second recommendation, have real markets, not just mechanisms where bids and offers are accepted by TSO at their own discretion, but really open and real markets. Third, systematically consider the contribution of all the centralized energy resources in the grid long-term planning. These are alternatives, reliable alternatives to system expansion, so valorize their contribution. Fourth recommendation, intensify transparency and access and sharing of data, also of grid data at all levels, TSO included, data from flexibility provided, and also your colleagues at DSO level. So this is extremely important, sharing for the sake of transparency. And fifth element, increase interoperability of marketplaces horizontally and vertically and with data exchange platforms. So only by satisfying these requirements, we will be able to develop revenue streams to reward the active participation of all end users to the clean energy transition. And secondly, to promote prosumer business models. So in short, a consumer-centric market design is more efficient, is more democratic, is more digital and green. Let's do it now.
The first recommendation was focusing on the huge potential of controllable load held in buildings and transport. And we listened to his recommendation very carefully because indeed we have on stage Bart Gentjens, Senior Manager Smart Buildings from Basics, and Freddy van Bochert, Innovation Manager from KBC Group, which also includes KBC Autolease. So representatives from the construction and from the mobility sector. Gentlemen, both of your sectors are undergoing an electrification. Why is it difficult to become an active partner in the energy system? And I'll start with you, Bart.
The way we look at things is that the actual market design is really focused on big actors, big industrial actors, while it's not really accessible for small building-related assets, nor households, nor big buildings where we are most active in. We believe that technically there are workarounds possible. However, these workarounds are really complex and very time-consuming. So we believe that by the time the value which we can create locally reaches the market, a lot of the value gets skimmed already. So this means also that for our customers, there's a big dependency created to big market players. And we believe that if we want to empower our customers, the building owners, that this market shift, this change towards a consumer-centric market design is really necessary.
Yeah. Freddy van Boggert, it's for the big parties, it's difficult, it's complicated. Is this also your experience?
Well, I must say that nothing is really stopping us from engaging in this domain. However, it is a very complex one. And for us as bankers, a deep dive is needed, of course, in order to get involved and, of course, in order to get committed in this new domain. A huge obstacle, however, is the fact that an enormous amount of scattered capabilities need to be brought together. And the parties having those capabilities not often have, of course, conflicting interests. And that's why I'm very glad to be part of the Internet of Energy community that is all about collaboration, of course. And it's a very good thing that you as system operators has provide us with the opportunity to be part of that because it's a very well organized and good managed framework that we need.
Mm-hmm. You both refer to the complexity of the energy sector, and indeed, we asked for a statement from Kaome Lofredo, who is the energy manager at the European consumer organization BEUC, and he is representing the voice of the consumer.
Consumers' flexible energy consumption is key for Europe to become carbon neutral by 2050. However, if you really want to motivate consumers to use energy flexibly, this should bring clear financial benefits for consumers and should also be made very easy for them. The energy sector has a key role to make the flexible energy consumption the affordable and the easy choice for the consumer, making it the default choice.
Boggert, KBC has a lot of experience with consumers. Is it true that consumers will only participate when it's easy, when it's affordable, and that the hassle should be for the service provider?
Well, indeed, I think we have to take complexity out of their hands totally, in a very radical way, because I'm convinced that consumers are not, let's say, prepared to pay a lot of effort in order to participate in this system. Mm-hmm. They want to participate, but they want to do it in an effortlessly manner. And they don't have the know-how nor the time to spend in order to engage and be very busy with it. And I think all they want is comfort, no risks, no worries, and an affordable price, of course. And to compare it to something we all know from the financial sector, when you go, for instance, abroad, Marleen, and you are withdrawing an amount of cash out of an automated teller machine there, you take it for granted because it's normal. But on the other hand, in the background is a very complex process running in order to make that possible, of course. But that is not something you have to take care of. It happens, and you don't care, and that's okay. We will care about it. So that's one point. And on the other hand, when we talk about financial incentives, that's something I think we should a bit careful with, because money as a motivator often leads to disappointment, I think. And what we need to do in the end is becoming engaged in a more sustainable system at an affordable price. And there is no alternative, even when the financial side is probably not that appealing for people. And in the end, I think they will adapt and they will forget how it used to be. For instance, when we see what happened with the flat screen TV sets, some point in time there was one in the showroom and it was awfully expensive and nobody bought it except perhaps some geeks. And then suddenly the tempo increased and everyone has one now, except for Peter Hinsen, who has a large collection of bulky screens.
Yeah. But so it will become the new normal.
It will become the new normal, and it will be affordable in the end.
Yeah. Bart Gentens, imagine that the new market design is in place. What additions could you bring to your customers?
Well, I think the possibilities are endless. It's our own creativity which will prove to be the limit. But when I look at my customers, for instance, I see my customer expectations changing. I see in large commercial real estate, for instance, I see my customers wanting to be less energy consuming. They want to use at the same time their real estate more flexibly, and at the same time they're becoming much more critical about comfort and well-being for all the good reasons. And they want it to be simple. Those are quite some expectations you need to manage. The technology is there. We have technology to manage this already. What we see now is, by having access to all of this data, all of this knowledge, we see a latent potential, very big latent potential. And we feel caged. And I think really when we see a smart city evolving, that we need to unleash this potential. Let me give you two concrete examples. One, for instance, when you look at sustainability of real estate in general, it's measured by certificates, LEED, BREEAM, WELL, which are static representations of the state of a building when it's delivered. During the lifetime of this building, not everything is measured as good, and it's not very transparent. So this means that there's potential for a lot of greenwashing. With the consumer-centric market design and the exchange of energy blocks, which we just explained, we would be able to link comfort and preferences of our customers to real-time green, which will prove to be, I think, a very valuable solution. Another example, buildings are hubs. They're collaboration hubs. We all collaborate in buildings. However, they're also becoming energy hubs with a very solid connection to the grid. I think we need to use this to a very large extent. And when we look at the buildings, there are a lot of EVs in the basement. So for me, it makes total sense to find the right balance between consumption of the building and what the EVs are doing. But if we want to use this interaction, I think a consumer-centric market design and exchange of energy blocks can really facilitate the interaction and the transactions between buildings and cars.
Mm-hmm. And there was where your sectors will come together. We have another statement ready from Jan van Latem, Managing Director Benelux from SMA Solar Technology. SMA is a leading specialist in PV system technology, and they developed an open Internet of Things energy platform.
We at SMA are ready to go with our technology framework. Elia is proposing a customer-centric framework. But what we need to obtain now is the willingness from governments all around to provide also a holistic regulatory framework to make this evolution possible.
Indeed, that's an interesting remark. We need a regulatory framework. What could governments do, Freddy van Bochert?
Well, I think we are all largely inspired by the Clean Energy for All Europeans package. That needs, of course, to be transposed into our national legal systems. And I do hope that our legislators will do this in a manner that the new opportunities arising from this core concept in the energy legislation becomes, let's say, that gets not drowned into new complexity. Mm-hmm. That's something which is, I think, we should care about. Because, of course, and there was also someone who talked about it before, these energy communities are in the very core of the new system. And as we all know, of course, collectivities are very difficult to manage. And that's why the framework around it should be maximally facilitating, because otherwise I fear that it will have a very slow start.
Yeah, keep it simple. That's the slogan. Let's switch to Germany again to join Niklas Schirmer, head of new business at Elli. Hello, Niklas. Everybody knows Volkswagen, but in Belgium we are not that familiar with Elli. I had a look at your website. Elli is Volkswagen's own startup for all activities connected to the charging of the electric cars. Elli offers services like wall box chargers. They have financial solutions to pay at public charging points, and they even supply green electricity. Why does Volkswagen have a separate brand for EV charging?
Yeah, I'm Alain. So in 2018, we founded Eli, or the Volkswagen Group Charging, to support the electrification initiative of the entire Volkswagen Group and to make charging accessible all over Europe. And you mentioned already that we also have this green electricity supplier built up in Germany. And that's our first footprint in the energy market. And now, as we are moving on, our mission is really to connect these two mega industries of the mobility sector and the energy sector.
Mm-hmm. Can you say that the lack of a consumer-centric market design slows down your business, actually?
Well, I mean, there is a lot of market design change and innovation need. And we see it today, and it was already mentioned, if you have your company car charging at home, there are two different legal entities behind it, and you want just to let the company pay the bill for your company car, and you have someone owning the energy contract at home, then you have already a very nice example for consumer-centric market design, and where you really have to go more in the forefront. But secondly, and if I look in the near future and also in the further future, there are a lot of opportunities that we, with the electric vehicles, bring to the energy market. And the entire energy regulation and market design has not thought about electric vehicles when it was written. So I think this is now the time for innovation and really rethink the market design at this point.
Yeah, and then my next question is, of course, what should be done according to Eli?
Well, so I think if it comes to electric vehicles, we first of all need a common understanding that we have here a piece of storage, but it's a very special piece of storage. It's a mobile storage. And we need to integrate that. So look at it as if it was a stationary storage, and then we have to solve all the issues that we today have with the stationary storage. And then we need maybe some add-ons as well. So big issues are we need flexibility signals, so that's price signals. And we need to rethink through identity management. We need to identify these small assets that are around there. And then it comes also to the question of metering and everything to unleash the flexibility that's essentially behind the meter at the customer's premise. Yeah. So that's the technical aspect, I would say. But there's another aspect, and that's why I'm very happy to be in this international round here. We really have to think that this storage on wheel crosses borders. Mm-hmm. This is the first time that I see in the energy market where we really see the need for a unified approach all over Europe. Because if I want to use my electric vehicle in Belgium or in Germany, more or less the same rules should apply. And then we can develop a business around it.
Yeah, and it's also new for the TSOs, of course, because it's an asset that is leaving the control zone of the transmission system operators. That's a nice remark that you made. Elia is participating in the German version of Internet of Energy, together with 50 Hertz, with Stromnetz Berlin, the DSO from Berlin, and with the IT provider Bosch. You are working on a use case to integrate EVs as a balancing reserve product. What other lessons learned so far for Eli and for your consortium?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the beginning, very simple lessons. First, the device is mobile. We have to think all the topics around mobility. Then the device is temporarily available only. So it's sometimes there and sometimes not. And this is also unknown to the energy market so far. And then if we go one step deeper, we are, of course, discussing security design and service level agreement aspects. So we are coming from an energy system where we have a small number of large assets, and we are moving into an energy system where we have a large number of small assets. And security by design and service level agreements must be designed differently. So if I have 1 million cars and 1 or 2 cars are not available to offer balancing service, this is not an issue. But if I have only 10 huge power blocks that are offering balancing service and 1 is missing, then I have an issue. And these aspects we are thinking through and trying to find really pragmatic solutions, also at low cost, because if we do not decrease the cost to be a participant in this market, we will not be successful to unleash this flexibility.
Okay, thank you, Niklas Jeanmichel, for joining us from Berlin. Basics and KBC are also involved in some use cases in Belgium. Bart, what are the lessons learned for Basics so far?
We've learned a lot. We come from construction, we're very good at this, but working together with all kinds of actors in the energy system was really an eye-opener for us about the value pool that we are sitting on as real estate actors. But it also made us aware of the complexity that it brings, unleashing this potential. So one of the most valuable lessons I've learned, at least, is that nobody can do this by themselves. It's really a change of mentality and more collaboration, more working together, and invest time to understand each other. When I started working with Elia, they didn't really understand the construction sector, and I didn't understand the energy sector. But talking, debating, it really opened our eyes. For companies, I would say, okay, invest in cross-disciplined people inside your buildings. And then finally, don't be afraid to test stuff. We're not there yet. We have a lot to learn. But the tests that we did in the IO Energy, it really made us much more mature in the way we approach the energy market right now. So again, thank you, Elia, for this initiative.
You're welcome. Freddy, how long will it take before we see some results on the commercial market?
Well, that's a good question. But the first job to do is create extremely customer-friendly solutions. And we are busy with that. So we are not ready for the market yet. But we need to be ready for the market when the market really picks up, as Bart already indicated. And of course, as always, the efforts become before the harvesting, and we need to be prepared to do that and to be patient with it, because it's very complex. And as I said in the beginning, we need to bring together the different capabilities. We often see that there are conflicting interests. We must bridge that. And of course, luckily, with the Internet of Energy, people are helping us to do that, or challenging us to do that. And of course, when your question is inspired by the short term, that is always very dominantly in our business way of thinking. At the beginning of a growth path where we're in now, this is kind of problematic, because we need to step over the shadow of the short term, as always. But on the other hand, I'm convinced that business will pick up fairly quickly now. And I'm also convinced that when we have good solutions that will be highly desired by the customers, that things will work out very fine.
The take-up will go very fast. There is still a lot to learn. There is still a lot to do. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us here today. And before we move on to the final statement, we would like to present one of the test cases from the Internet of Energy project. IO Energy was set up 2 years ago on the initiative of Elia in collaboration with the distribution system operators. And the new sandbox phase has just started. We would like to present Odyssey, a use case that puts the exchange of energy blocks already into practice.
Wouldn't you like your company to decarbonize by consuming truly green electricity? And by truly green, I mean consume what is being generated at that very moment from local resources and at a reasonable or even low price? Or maybe you're a prosumer. Out of 85% of the prosumers we interviewed is interested in exchanging the excess generated electricity with such a company in the neighborhood, making them truly green. And that's where Odyssey enters, building the bridge between those two. In order to realize this, we need to put together the correct pieces of the puzzle. And therefore, we need good partners.
The contribution of SMAPI will be to measure and to track energy produced and consumed. It will accelerate the energy transition. An example could be a homeowner that produces solar but is not at home? Well, if he has an electric vehicle, he could, for instance, charge the car at the shopping mall or at his employer's place. Well, a smart charger also measures the energy, and with the exchange of energy blocks project, we might offset the energy produced in the home with the energy consumed to charge the car. We believe this really will accelerate the energy transition.
The energy transition increasingly requires a matching between demand for electricity and production from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. Real-time prices for electricity increasingly reflect the balance of availability for renewable energy sources, and as such provide prosumers with an opportunity to react to those prices and lower their monthly energy bills. With USO and in the framework of the Odyssey project, we have developed an integrated solution from grid balancing up to the lowering of the electricity bill for prosumers.
For our consortium, it's absolutely critical that everyone can participate, independent from the supplier that you've chosen, and also in an effortless manner. That's why we will build the Odyssey service on top of the exchange of energy blocks to make this happen. In addition, we need to prove that the energy was indeed truly green. We will investigate together how to do this, how to certify and transfer these tokens between prosumer and consumer. Something I'm pretty sure Snowball would really like.
Snowball is a clean tech hub. As an accelerator, we help clean tech companies grow. Through our Living Lab, we test, we improve, we validate and we demonstrate new solutions from a technological point of view, from a user point of view, and as well from a business, economical and financial point of view. And we do so by offering our assets here on site, as well as our expertise and access to our network. With our partners from Team Odyssey, we will do exactly that. Snowball will serve as a test site for the Odyssey solution, and in the end, our mission is to help realize the energy transition and to contribute to a consumer-centric energy market.
The Odyssey project in Internet of Energy is just a start. We believe that services like Odyssey will set new standards for being truly green, and it will help consumers achieving this. We may start small, but we do dream big, integrating new technologies, new steerable assets, and also thinking about other essentials like grid congestions. Let's make this happen. Let's remove those barriers and open the market to services like Odyssey. And if you're interested to have Odyssey as a service for your company, just let me know.
Welcome in the last part with the closing remarks. Chris Peters, welcome back. I think it was the first Elia Group event where we had that many speakers from outside the sector. So it proves that things are changing.
Yes, indeed. We can see that there are many expectations, not only from consumers that might be a little bit frustrated that electricity is not yet at the level where telecom is, but we see as well that sectors are more and more knocking on our door because they get concerned. Because this is not only about an opportunity, it's also something where we have to work as a sector to remain relevant, because they want to make sure that they can charge when they want, they can make sure that they can deliver the service that they want to deliver to their customers. And therefore, it's very important that as a sector, together with those other sectors, we work together to make this happen.
Mm-hmm. From the many statements shared with us during this event, we have seen that policymakers also have expectations with regards to the energy sector. We have a final quote from the Belgian Minister of Energy, Tine van der Straten.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my firm belief that we will experience an iPhone-like moment in the energy sector over the next few years. The iPhone not only merged the internet and wireless phones together, it profoundly changed the telecommunications sector. Over the last decades, the electricity sector has undergone changes behind the meter, but no structural modifications have been made from a consumer perspective. And this is about to change. Just like the iPhone disrupted the power balance in telecommunication, renewable energy will do the same in energy. The sustainable electrification of society is crucial for enabling the transition into a net zero society. Inexpensive wind and solar energy are on the rise. We see batteries being rolled out, small and large scale. Electric vehicles will soon become the new normal. With this switch to renewables, new approaches to flexibility are needed. The iPhone only needed a network in order to fly. And the same goes for the energy sector. A network that will put consumers in the heart of the energy transition, that will allow consumers to connect, that will balance supply and demand. It is called consumer centricity. Elia Group's consumer-centric market design is an innovative idea that will allow to tap the unlocked potential that renewable energy has to offer. And therefore, digitalization is key. Consumer data from digital meters and artificial intelligence will guide and advise citizens and companies on the best time to use sustainable energy at the best price. They will be able to enjoy the financial benefits of cheaper energy without any loss of comfort. Citizens will truly enjoy all the benefits of the energy transition. At the same time, our network will be balanced and our security of supply will be guaranteed. The transition into a net zero society will require structural changes to the market. Changes are possible if there is collaboration across the value chain and across borders. Questions and issues surrounding the consumer-centric market design still need to be addressed. But at the same time, opportunities lie in front of us, and we need to seize them. The next years, a lot of exciting things will happen, and therefore, my policy needs to be as predictable as possible. Some would even say boring. But it is essential to create a framework for all of the involved actors, for all of you to work together and to reach our common goal. Let's do this.
Working together to seize the opportunities. Chris, is it also consumer-centric market design? Is it also important to maintain the relevance of the energy sector towards the consumers?
Yes, of course. So one of the fears that we have is if we don't move fast enough that we will lose on relevance. And what does that mean? That means that we actually will have to limit our clients. And therefore, it's so crucial that we now move forward in a constructive way with all actors involved.
Mm-hmm. So we come at the end of this event and you have something to announce to the public?
Yes, and I know that many people are waiting for this. So now that we have published this white paper to engage in that discussion, as said earlier during this session, we will launch 2 separate streams. One stream will be about experimenting, getting deeper into this new market design and understanding it from real practice. And for that, we will launch a hackathon, and this hackathon will be between 13, 14 and 15 of October, and we call anybody who is interested to join us to experiment with these new tools and to develop with us things that could be more interesting for consumers. So this is a call to students, academics, NGOs, companies, individuals, professionals, whoever is interested to know more about this and to ensure that we can bring those basics towards real consumer-focused products. And for that, Elia will provide during this hackathon the environment, meaning the data that is needed in real time so that those products can be developed, of course, in the format that is needed, a context in which people can work. And we will make sure that developers can from there develop things and experiment together with us. And so for that, you find the QR code on the chart and you can see how you can participate, and we will provide more information on that. Second thing is, of course, I can imagine that people are sitting with many questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to have a Q&A session here, but that allows people to first read the documents and then send us their questions, because what we plan to do is by the end of August, we will organize an info session where we deep dive on those new principles, and so that we also address the many questions that we already have received and that we hope that we receive in the coming months from you. From there, we will go into a series of roundtables. Roundtables where each time we will address specific topics, specific attention points, and make sure that we get the input from everybody involved. The first one will be planned for the end of September, and at the end of September we will look at roles and responsibilities. Of course, a topic of concern of many people, and we think we have good solutions into that, but we also will listen to everybody and see how we all together make this work. End of October, then, we will move to the next step where we look at what does this mean in terms of data, what does it mean in terms of communication, what are the challenges that we see over there, and how do we find good solutions for that. And then we will finalize the session in November. At the end of November, we will have a session which is specifically, and there we will go separate between Berlin and Brussels, because there we will zoom in on the specificities of each of those markets and see how we can make it happen so that by the early start of next year, we can start testing with everybody together so that the rollout plan, as we said, bringing this to real consumers by 23, 24, that we can maintain this speed. I think this is a brilliant moment. This is our moment. Actually, this is your moment. So find the QR code, look for more information, and sign up to one of those streams, both of those streams. So we're looking forward to talk with you and to collaborate with you.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for this last statement. So the launch of the vision paper and the white paper are just the beginning. That's a nice way to conclude this event about consumer centricity. For those who would like to revisit everything we have covered today, we will soon publish the white paper on our website alongside a link to the recording of today's event. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon at one of the roundtables or at the hackathon later this year in Brussels. Have a nice day and keep it safe.